This is Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and this podcast series is called Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge. And the intention of these podcasts is to support and empower you through this process of spiritual human integration, being able to figure out who you are, who you were, all the elements of your humanness, all the elements of past lives, all the essences of you that have been with you forever, the karmic patterns that you're working through, the emotional, spiritual, vibrational addictions that have been part and parcel of so much of your life, and how to just be with all of that. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so many of us are so unconscious of this process that my intention was to provide some insight and some experience and some stories that could perhaps enlighten you to like, oh yeah, that's part of what I'm going through, or that sounds familiar, that kind of thing. So that's what this is all about. So I wanted to talk today about that part of the process where you don't feel so bad anymore. In a sense, the dark night of the soul is no longer so dark. It's dawning, and the sunrise might be already happening, where you're beginning to feel more and more empowered, more spiritually connected to yourself and to oneness. You're feeling less connected to the external world, and as Jesus says, be in the world but not of it, so that you're beginning to have a sense of what he meant when he said that and what that means for you in your life. So there may be changes that are occurring for you. You may be ready to leave a relationship that isn't working, or be more honest in a relationship that isn't working, or maybe shift careers or where you're living so that what you're providing for yourself is more well-being and whole being. And so this is an amazing time for you or for me or for whoever going through this process, because there's a willingness to begin to change what you can change. There's the willingness to have the courage to change the things you can, and to accept the things you can't. Every once in a while you'll hear Gracie bark. So she's just part of the audience. So you're at this place where you're more empowered to make those choices for yourself and know the wisdom of making such choices. At the same time, there are these times where, because you're not, let me put it this way, there were so many times in my life, like most of my life, where I have been feeling something other than positive. And there's always been dread or despair of some sort, perhaps depression, sadness, angst, anxiousness, emotions that were less than positive, self-doubt, uncertainty, lack of faith, those kinds of things. And so when I got to a point, or have been getting to a point where I'm feeling less of that, like hardly any of those negativities. More rarely am I experiencing negative thinking. And so the pattern, it's like the absence of those patterns, it feels like a void. It's like, wait a second, I'm not feeling any of that. I'm feeling something else. And that something else may be I'll say normal, but normal in a sense that a new normal for you, a space without the negativity, a space without what we consider to be negative emotions, negative thoughts, and in a space of, wow, things are going well. It may not be that all the wishes are coming true, but even so, it's kind of a fascinating dilemma, because we get to a point, and I've experienced this myself, and I've read about it, where all your dreams are coming true, and it's like, all right, this is the most remarkable time of my life. There is less and less attachment to the success of you, the endeavors that you do. There's less attachment to money. There's less attachment to things being a certain way. There's less attachment to your preferences. Things don't matter so much. And it's kind of scary when you go, this is supposed to matter. This is supposed to matter. And it doesn't. Like, how do you be with that? There was a fellow, and I don't remember his name, but the book he wrote was The Politically Incorrect Spiritual Enlightenment. I think that was what he called it. Spiritually Incorrect Enlightenment, or something like that. And the point of what he was talking about throughout his stories was this place of detachment, that though he was here on the planet and he was participating, there wasn't like the fulfillment or the joy or the blissness in some of those times of his life that he had arrived, but he hadn't. It doesn't mean that there's this constant state of blissness that we expect, this nirvana state of being. Now, I don't know when and how that shows up, if it is consistent. My understanding is it isn't consistent, because we're always on to the next level of enlightenment. We're always on to the next level of awakening. And so we're here and we're in this stage and we're feeling what we're feeling. We're trying to work it out at this stage. It's like if you were climbing mountains and you got to a specific altitude that was different than the one that you've been in, then you've got to acclimate to that. And things begin to happen once you begin to acclimate. And that's kind of difficult sometimes. A client of mine, I'll call her Karen. I always change the names, and it may sound the same like the same name, but it's a different person. But we were having a session the other day, and she was like, I've got the job that I want. I've got a very good partner. My house is good. Everything is good. And I don't feel good. I feel numb. I feel disconnected. I don't understand. I'm supposed to feel good. Why don't I feel good? And this is a dilemma, and it gets very upsetting sometimes and disturbing, because we have an expectation that life is going to look greater and better, and we're going to feel wonderful, and sometimes we don't. And sometimes, again, it's this place of transition. If you've climbed Mount Everest, or even a smaller mountain, like a 10,000 foot mountain, the altitude it changes. You might get altitude sickness as you go up, and you're supposed to want to go up, and you're having this beautiful experience of ascending these mountains, and yet there can be this possibility of fatigue and exhaustion and numbness and even depression and altitude sickness. And but it's part of the climb. It's part of the adjustment. It's part of the moving through this process. So sometimes we don't feel like we expect to feel as we're ascending, awakening, becoming more enlightened. Something is shifting. And part of that is, I think, I don't know, there's a lot of reasons, but part of it, I believe, is that we are detaching from the human experience. We're detaching from what used to matter. There's a bumper sticker. I've probably said this before, but when I was in my 30s, I saw this bumper sticker. It said, "Nothing matters, and what if it did?" And that has stuck with me for all these years. In that there's a truth in that nothing matters. What matters is only what we make it matter, what we make it mean. There's no meaning to anything except for what we make it mean. And as we become more enlightened and we become more clear of who we are as a spiritual essence being, we become less attached to what we were attached to when we were more in our ego attachments and our sense of, well, this is what I'm supposed to want. This is what you're supposed to have. This is supposed to be the way it is. That strivingness that is so much a part of our consensus reality. And when you get to a point where you go, I have no interest in striving for that. That is not of any interest to me. It makes sense from the the point of view that the consensus view of reality of what we've used to be striving for just doesn't have any juice anymore. The significance of it is gone. And how we transition into what's next is the next stage of the process. And there's no fixing because there's nothing wrong. And there's no nothing to do because there's nothing to do. It's just an evolution of you at this stage. In the previous podcast, I talked about the disidentification, the disidentifying of yourself from what you used to be identified with. And that as we become more aligned with our highest truth, our highest knowing, those identifications shift and change. So at this stage, we become more conscious of, those things are no longer that significant to me. And so what is significant to me? And that was the conversation I was having with Karen, is she's at a point where she doesn't know what's significant to her. And it's a little bit like disconcerting because it's like, shouldn't I be happy that I have this great boyfriend and my job and money and everything's great? Shouldn't I feel great? And it's like, yes and no. And this is just part of the stage of this transition. It's I was thinking as I was preparing for this podcast, it's like, man, I just seem to keep giving you guys more and more of like, here's what's next. Here's the next level of struggle. Here's the next level of being with the big fat be with. Here's the next level. And it's like, when does the good stuff come? And the good stuff is coming all the time. And at the same time, it looks different, perhaps, than what you anticipated. It doesn't appear, perhaps, or feel or sense, because who you are as this feeling, sensing being is changing. And you don't know who you are anymore. You're different. And it's like a birthing process. That the being, the little baby that was inside its mother's womb is not the same. It's now in a different circumstance. It doesn't know how to be itself in this new environment. And that's what you're going through too, if you're going through that. It's part of what I've been going through for a very long time, and getting more and more clearer in a way that I can articulate that to you, and supposedly, hopefully, make sense to you that all these stages, all these elements are just part of this human spirit fulfillment process. And that makes it normal, and it also means sometimes you're going to want some support to help you through this. So working with a spiritual coach or a spiritual guide or somebody that has the experience and can support you through this, it might be necessary for you. Maybe not. It's up to you. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. I know that for me, this process has been hugely helpful to articulate these processes. It helps normalize it for me. It takes the fear out of it that there's something wrong, and really allows the fuller level of guidance to come from higher, for me, my higher knowing, my higher wisdom. All right, that's pretty much it for now. Hey, if you're interested, my new book that just came out on Amazon, it came out on Barnes & Noble, it came out all over the place. It's called I've Arrived. Well, sort of. It's 101 revelations and discoveries I stumbled upon on the sacred path to who knows where. Big, long title, not so big book. It's kind of small, but it's really a wonderful book. I've gotten a lot of good acknowledgments on it, and if you take a look, if you want to, it's pretty exciting for me. All right. Many blessings to you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.